Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's Kators 88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.
Did you hear about the executive order that President Trump signed recently? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of them. He signed it on April 23rd. And it could have significant potential implications for women and Black Americans, minorities in general. Do you remember the year that women got the right to have a credit card and not be discriminated against?
No, I don't.
With loan, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Remember that?
Yeah, it was a
1974.
Okay.
Suddenly women had the freedom to buy houses because they could get loans and not be discriminated against, or they weren't supposed to be discriminated against. They could have legal action against it if they were. So they could get funding, they could get credit cards, they could have their own bank accounts, all that stuff.
Okay.
Because they couldn't be discriminated against.
Yeah.
That applied also to race. Couldn't be discriminated against based on race or gender. Well, on April 23rd, President Trump signed an executive order titled Restoring Equality of Opportunity and Meritocracy, which directs federal agencies to deprioritize enforcement of these statutes and regulations that include disparate impact liability, is what it's called. So this is like a legal doctrine, and it allows courts to challenge policies that disproportionately harm protected groups, such as racial minorities and women, even without evidence of like intentional discrimination. So it's like how discrimination gets like snuck through, not explicitly, but implicitly. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's like this check and balances that happens. And this happens across all sectors, including employment, housing, education, criminal justice, etc. But it was raised concerns regarding women's access to credit because it targets the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, saying that you can't discriminate. It was designed to prevent sex-based credit discrimination, and it could make it potentially difficult for women to obtain credit cards and loans independently, because technically now the enforcement of this act that Congress passed in 1974 isn't really there, or is being given permission from the president to not enforce.
So I wonder how that's going to that would practically play out. I get the Department of Justice is not going to prosecute and prioritize prosecutions for that. But is it like what? Like regulatory agencies not paying attention and catching stuff, so that if you need a problem to be rectified, you have to find your own lawyer and stuff?
So it like doesn't eliminate the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. It just makes it
right.
like it's weakened by this executive order. So a single woman may find herself required to provide additional collateral or be faced with a higher interest rate, particularly in the federal sector. So female farmers very well could be affected by this with USDA loans. Married women might increasingly be expected to provide spousal consent or financial guarantees for loans or credit cards because it's not going to be enforced. You know, and then you have these federally backed mortgages.
Yeah, I was thinking FHA loans.
So it's very possibly could affect housing loans.
Yeah.
Basically, companies holding federal contracts no longer have obligations to actively prevent racial or gender discrimination.
Right. Right. My gosh.
It could have impact even on like job discrimination and stuff like that too. Particularly in the federal sector.
Right. So then you basically have companies are de-incentivized to make things equal based on gender. So they can kind of do whatever. And then the only recourse you have is you would have to what? You would have to sue them with your own dime and your own attorney to get them to change something. But who has the time or the money to be able to do that? Like the proactive measures that proactively keep companies from doing it are gone. You still have your reactive measures. But then the burden's on the woman financially and time and intellectually. Because you can still take it to court. But geez, now that's all on you. Because, like, I get it's an executive order, but that only affects the enforcement of legislation. It doesn't affect the judges and the courts. It's a different branch of government.
So disparate impact claims refer to legal actions addressing practices or policies that appear neutral on the surface, but disproportionately harm specific protected groups, such as racial minorities, women, older people, or disabled individuals, even if there was no deliberate intention to discriminate. So like an example of this would be a standardized employment test that disproportionately excludes minority candidates, or lending practices resulting in fewer mortgages for communities of color, like redlining.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that get sneaky and sneak through. And this executive order basically says we're not going to be enforcing.
Right. So all the proactive measures to prevent that are going to not be enforced. But you still can go to court and say they violated this legislation, which protects my rights, and take them to court. An executive order.
No, you are right.
Yeah.
Individuals and local governments can still pursue legal action.
But now the burden's on the person.
But now, yes.
There's proactive protections.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is going to potentially affect women, people of color, minorities, people with disabilities. Like we can just, apparently discriminate now. I mean, in so few words, right? It's not like flat out, but it is a weakening of the law that was built to protect.
Yeah.
Okay. So last week we talked about films that display toxic and healthy masculinity and why it matters to both men and women.
Right.
And we ended on the note of Lord of the Rings, which we know how passionate and how much you love Lord of the Rings.
Let's go.
I know you love it so much.
Yep.
But I got to tell you something. No matter how epic the Lord of the Rings is, it still fails the Bechdel test.
Oh, I think I know what the Bechdel test is.
What do you think it is?
Okay. Isn't it a test where you have a scene with two female characters in dialogue with each other, not related to a male character?
Exactly. Yes, I'm proud of you.
Thank you. And I think it does fail. It does.
It does.
Shoot. Oh, no.
So,
it does fail.
I know. So it doesn't do it doesn't do women justice in the film.
Like it's good for healthy masculinity, but not good for female representation and healthy feminism.
Yes, exactly. So this test, like you said, you have to have at least two women in a scene who are talking to each other about something other than a man. That is like, it seems like the bare minimum.
Yeah, but it can be hard to pass the test.
Yeah, it is hard. So the test originated from a 1985 comic strip called The Rule by Alison Bechdel, crediting her friend Liz Wallace for the idea. Though it was intended somewhat tongue-in-cheek at first, it has since become a widely used basic measure of female representation in media. So important note, though, that the Bechdel test doesn't measure quality of representation even. It's just the bare minimum presence of an independent female dialogue.
Right.
That's what we're talking about here.
Right.
The bare minimum presence of female dialogue.
Yeah.
A film can pass the Bechdel test, obviously, and still portray harmful stereotypes. So just because I name a film that might pass the Bechdel test, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily saying that it promotes healthy feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And also to say that if a film fails the Bechdel test, that it's not saying that there's not a strong female lead in that film.
Sure.
It just is not presented as this autonomous female character that's worried about other things than just men.
Yeah.
And has relationships than just a male relationship.
Right.
Films that fail the Bechdel test. Some of these are kind of surprising. Some of them might not be for you.
Mm-hmm.
But these are very beloved films.
Okay.
Where either women don't talk to each other or when they do, it's only about a man.
Okay.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I know.
The Social Network.
Okay.
Star Wars: A New Hope. The Avengers.
Which one?
2012.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Okay.
Slumdog Millionaire. I know you love that show.
Yeah.
The Imitation Game. La La Land.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah. So films that do pass the Bechdel test, these films include at least one conversation, that's it, between two women about something other than a man.
Okay.
Black Panther.
Yeah.
Little Women.
Love Little Women.
He does really like Little Women.
And I have 4 daughters, so,
Yeah, you live it.
I live it.
Barbie.
Okay.
That was such a good show.
It was a good
or
movie.
a good movie.
Yeah.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
That was good too.
It was good. The Color Purple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Frozen.
I loved that they made true love about sisters in Frozen.
Me too.
And not romance. Loved it.
The Hunger Games.
Yep.
Hidden Figures.
Yeah, Hidden Figures was good.
So there are more kinds of tests in film than the Bechdel test. There's the Mako Mori test, where at least one woman has her own narrative arc independent of a male character.
Oh, haven't heard of that one. Okay.
The Duvernay test, which I think I said that wrong, guys, and I'm sorry, which is meaningful representation of people of color with fully realized lives, not just stereotypes or background roles.
Yeah, okay.
There's the Riz test.
What's that?
It avoids harmful Muslim stereotypes,
Oh.
represents Muslim characters as complex individuals.
Oh, that's good.
And there's the Vito Russo test, which is LGBTQ plus characters are represented, identified, and not solely defined by their orientation or identity. You see that a lot when there's an LGBTQ character, is that they are defined literally by their orientation. Like that is their identity.
Yeah, their characters aren't really fleshed out.
No, it's not. It's not given. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that person contributes meaningfully to the plot.
Yeah. Do you have films that go along with each of those tests?
So I haven't found a film that checks all those boxes.
That passes every test?
That passes every test.
Oh, wow.
Moonlight passes the most. It passes the Riz test, the Vito Russo test. There's not something that I found. Now, if any listeners out there know of a film or a series that covers all those and checks all those boxes, I would love to hear from you because I want to watch it and see what that's like. But there's a real psychological impact of seeing yourself represented in media. That's really significant.
Right.
Especially for marginalized groups whose identities are often erased, even more so in the culture we live in right now, stereotyped, even more so in the culture we live in right now, and just sidelined. So I want to do a breakdown of the research-backed psychology effects that this has when you don't see yourself or when you do see yourself and you're represented poorly in media.
Yeah.
So validation of identity, okay? Seeing people who look like you, who love like you, or who live like you confirms that your existence matters. Positive representation helps combat feelings of invisibility, marginalization, or otherness. Studies have shown that representation improves self-esteem, especially in children and adolescents. African American children exposed to positive Black role models show higher self-worth. Have you ever heard of the Clark-Doll test in the 1940s?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe.
There was a test that they did, a study that they did with Black children. And they found that Black children often preferred white dolls over Black dolls, associating them with positive traits like beauty and goodness with whiteness.
I think I have heard of that before, actually.
They concluded that exposure to racist cultural messaging impacts self-esteem and racial identity in children. And this was famously cited in the Brown versus Board of Education argument against segregation and how psychologically damaging it was. So they used that study as part of the reason.
I didn't know that.
In their defense as to why segregation shouldn't be there. General cultural consequences of underrepresentation. The Gina Davis Institute did a study in 2019, and they reported that across the top 100 grossing films of the decade, women held only 31% of speaking roles. Only 4% of films had gender-balanced cast. Characters of color and LGBTQ plus were even more underrepresented than that. And this lack of representation, again, just helps reinforce cultural myths about who gets to lead, who matters, whose stories deserve attention.
Yeah.
It also helps us model possibilities. So there's this windows and mirrors effect, they call it. So a mirror allows people to see themselves reflected in stories, showing that their experiences, emotions, and struggles are shared. And windows allow people to view and understand lives different from their own.
Oh, that's cool.
So it increases empathy and reduces prejudice.
Yeah.
So you have these mirrors and windows. Without mirrors, marginalized groups internalize the idea that they are not central or valuable or capable of certain futures. There's a study that was done. It's called the Obama effect. They did this in 2009. They found that Black participants performed significantly better on standardized tests after being reminded of Barack Obama's election victory compared to the control groups.
Whoa.
This suggests that seeing high-achieving role models who share your identity boosts performance and reduces stereotype threats.
Wow.
So when role models break through these barriers, they can lift the performance of those they share their identity with.
Yeah. That is incredible, the Obama effect. Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Imagine what having a female president would do for girls.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was a meta-analysis of 77 studies that found that exposure to thin, ideal media, so thin media, significantly increases body dissatisfaction in women and girls. Get this. Girls as young as 5 years old report body dissatisfaction after exposure to media portraying thin, sexualized female characters. That's Mona. That's our 5-year-old.
Oh.
When women are underrepresented or only represented as sexual objects, girls internalize these norms and it reflects within them like their worth and the possibilities, what they can become.
Immediately makes me want to search up shows and films that pass the Bechdel test and pass the Mako-Mori test and be like, okay, when I want to invite them to watch a show or a movie or something, pick something from there. Like, I love Moana and Frozen and Seeing Red and Encanto. You have all of these different representations, not just of ethnicities, but body types and stuff. Frozen, you have true love is this love between sisters, not this romantic love. Moana, you have this really strong protagonist who doesn't look anything like Elsa or Anna. Same thing in Seeing Red and same thing in Encanto, because what did you have like most of Disney up to like maybe starting like the 90s maybe? You had all these really thin white female characters, Cinderella, Snow White, Little Mermaid, and nothing else.
TV shows and films. Now, this was a quick search, real-time live, okay? So don't tear me up for this if some of these are a little off. But the shows that pass the Bechdel and the Mako-Mori tests. Mad Max Fury Road features multiple named women who have conversations unrelated to men and possess independent story arcs. Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah, Rey's a strong... Yeah.
Inside Out.
Love Inside Out.
Spirited Away.
Okay.
I've never seen that.
Never seen it either.
Arrival. I don't think I've seen that either.
I haven't either.
The Hunger Games.
Right, yep.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
The Handmaid's Tale. Big Little Lies. There are some examples for people wanting to watch shows that pass both tests.
Yeah. Frozen passed both tests.
Yeah, I think it does too.
Frozen does. Moana does. She passes the Bechdel test with her and her grandma.
You're right, she does.
Seeing Red for sure. The Panda movie. Absolutely passes that. Encanto, yep, passes it. Both of them.
Yeah.
Like great animated shows for younger girls. Gosh, I have this masculine urge to protect my daughters from media and what would make them think about themselves. Like there's a dad masculine urge to be like, no, not here. Like that's not going to happen here. I need to take care and protect. I need to nurture and protect your brain as long as I can.
Yeah.
So you can build all of these good frameworks in your brain.
Yeah. Representation expands what people believe is possible for their own lives.
Oh, yeah.
So when young girls see women having emotionally intelligent conversations outside of just talking about a man, that helps form conversation. When women see other women when young girls see women being scientists, I can do that.
Exactly.
Like there's just so much.
Yeah.
The lack of representation narrows perceived career paths, relationship possibilities, and just personal agency.
There's a TikTok you made like 4 years ago of me where I'm talking about how, like, as a white guy, of course I grow up thinking I could do anything because I see white guys in every field, and it's very subconscious. It's I never consciously thought about it, but of course I'm not going to think, oh, that job is for me because someone who looks like me does that job.
Right.
So of course I can do anything. I do not know what it feels like to be a kid that doesn't see my skin color or my gender in a particular field, and then what that makes you think about yourself related to that field. I have no idea what that feels like.
Yeah, there was a study that was published that found that girls exposed to women scientists were significantly more likely to envision themselves in science-related fields. Get this. That doesn't sound very yeah, okay. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But what kind of impact is this really having? Okay. There is an effect called the Scully effect.
Oh, from X-Files?
From X-Files. So the Gina Davis Institute found that 63% of women working in STEM fields cited the character Dana Scully from the X-Files as a role model who influenced their career choice.
Whoa.
So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about representation. 63% of women surveyed in STEM fields said that because they saw, now this is a little bit of an older study because that's when
it's older.
This study was done in 2006, I believe. Mm-hmm. But still 63% of women who are working in STEM fields cited that character.
That's pretty mind-blowing. Wow.
Huge impacts we're talking about.
Yeah.
Think about if that impacts STEM that way, think about what LGBTQ representation would impact.
Mm-hmm.
Or, people of color.
Yeah.
The impact.
Yeah. I got a great example that's not in STEM. The show Suits. You have the two main roles are two white guys. Yes. But who is the managing partner? Who is the head of the firm? A very strong, very intelligent, very level-headed, successful black woman. Jessica Pearson. She's one of my favorite characters in that show, and she's great representation for in practicing law for women and for women of color.
That's awesome.
I'm just thinking of other shows now. I'm thinking medical. I think there's more medical shows probably that have good female. I mean, I think there's several strong ones in House, like Dr. Cuddy.
Yeah,
and those on House's staff. I think of I watched Chicago Med for a while, and there was a really great female doctor and female charge nurse in that show. The Pit had several good female characters.
They did, and I do appreciate that The Pit didn't really take any romantic turns. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was alluding to that several times, but it really didn't. It didn't. I mean, they did address some past stuff, it seems like.
Which is very well done with healthy masculinity, too.
Yeah, it was.
That main character, Dr. Robbie, was awesome. He's like an Aragorn figure. I should make up a test called the Aragorn test. For healthy masculine characters. Is there a character that passes the Aragorn test in this film?
Yeah, there needs to be a name for something like that.
Yeah.
Black Panther had a huge impact on the black community. They did several studies on it, but they did a qualitative study. It involved 137 black viewers. They were aged 19 to 63. And it revealed that watching Black Panther positively influenced their racial identity. Participants reported feelings of empowerment, appreciation for black beauty, and a sense of unity. And it helped with coping mechanisms against racial stress. They found that the same study indicated that the film served as a coping mechanism, providing an escape from racial stressors and fostering hope for the future.
It was a great film.
It also had an impact on black girls to pursue STEM fields.
Oh, that makes total sense because Shuri. Wow, yeah.
And that whole film just challenged so many black stereotypes, which I loved so much. Because the film, the portrayal of a technologically advanced African nation, strong black characters, challenging these prevailing stereotypes and offering a new narrative that centers around celebrating black excellence.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of Black Wall Street. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So tragic ending to it though. But it was this really thriving black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the Greenwood district in the early 20th century. Like 1905-06 to like 1921. It was one of the wealthiest black neighborhoods in America. Black-owned banks, hotels, cafes, movie theaters, grocery stores, schools, hospitals, its own bus system. And this was like beginning of the 1900s. Like slavery has been gone for like 40, 50 years. Okay? Insane. People call it Black Wall Street because of its economic success, like a black version of Wall Street. There's a lot of black, yeah, anyway. But then May 31st through June 1st, 1921, a bunch of white mobs triggered by these false accusations that a black teenage boy assaulted a white girl. They attacked Greenwood. Hundreds of black residents were killed. 35 square blocks burnt to the ground. 10,000 people left homeless. Planes even dropped incendiary bombs from the sky. One of the first aerial bombings on U.S. soil.
Oh my gosh, why have I never heard about this?
Insurance companies denied claims from black business owners. And the event was covered up or barely talked about for decades. If Black Wall Street would have continued, like that's a Wakanda feeling. This thriving black community of resources and education and advancement and stuff like that.
I've never heard of that.
Huge tragedy, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's so... makes you feel a lot of things when you hear about it. It's very, very... gosh, horrendous, and what generational wealth was wiped out.
I think it's just important to remember that representation in media, it's not just about fairness. It's not about... representation isn't about fairness, period. It's not about being fair. It's about mental health, self-worth, possibility, people's futures. Because when we don't see ourselves reflected in these mirrors and we don't have these windows to look into, people just disappear without representation.
Yeah. There's all kinds of psychological reasons why it's important. And that it's done in a realistic, tasteful, and holistic way. Not just like a pandering or like a token character or something like that.
You know, they also found that when students see themselves represented in history lessons, textbooks, and via like teachers, their engagement and academic performance improves.
Oh, I totally think I've witnessed that firsthand as a teacher.
Yeah. Latino students in this study, when exposed to culturally relevant curriculum, showed improved GPA, attendance, and motivation in schoolwork. Representation isn't just nice to have. It is psychologically empowering and creates real-world outcomes in education, leadership, health, career successes.
I think there's something to be learned for everybody when it comes to representation. I think there's something to be learned for those who need the representation, the mirroring, and those who have the representation, but need windows to have more empathy and identification with people who are different from themselves. And there's something for children and for adults. I think there's something for everybody to glean from what representation means in popular culture.
Well, thank you for joining us today for this episode.
Yes, thank you so much.
So important to, be seen as a human. Yes. And show humanity in its full spectrum.
I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.